The year was 2014, or maybe 2013, and I was a freshman in high school. On a general basis, it sucked. I mean, it was an American public high school with literally thousands of kids. It's a given that it's going to blow some major balls. One thing in particular that made it extra sucky, though, was gym class. Specifically, this one guy in gym class. This dude's name was Jack McGee. He was a jerk. At first, it was pretty standard high school guy in gym class. Level of obnoxious guy. You know the type. Overly loud, unreasonably aggressive during games. Bossy, tossing the collective brain cell back and forth between his two equally ape-like buddies. The usual. I don't know when exactly it happened, but he developed a sort of eye for me after the first couple of weeks or so. He started asking me bizarre questions that I now believe may have been some sort of innuendo, sitting uncomfortably close to me, resting his hand on my gym shoe. General creepy behavior. He once blocked a doorway with his body. This dude was massive, forcing me to literally squeeze my way through and crawl over him. He then tried to grab me and pin me to him once I was almost through, but I'm very good at dodging physical contact whenever possible, and dipped on him before his giant gorilla arm could catch me. I still shudder thinking about it. I cannot emphasize enough how terrible this dude smelled. But the true breaking point came during the peak cruelty of this school-mandated sadism. Gym swim. Before anyone asks, let it be known that, yes, I did try to tell someone about this. I told my gym teacher first semester really early on that Dak was making me incredibly uncomfortable. The gym teacher waved it off, saying he was just playing around and that it's probably because he likes you. His suggestion was basically to just put up with it and wait it out because he was sure Jack would lose interest soon anyways. Spoiler alert, he didn't. Second semester rolls around and the 4-week period of gym swim descends upon us like the bloated carcass of a catapulted whale, crushing us beneath its wet, foul-smelling body. 40-some-odd adolescents forced into a cold, overly chlorinated pool for 50 minutes, adorned in swimsuits, determined to crawl up into our butts like Ant-Man himself. It was hell on earth, basically. As I've mentioned in a previous post, I'm autistic, so the echoing sounds, reflected fluorescent lights, pungent odors, slimy floors, and assorted nonsense made the situation even worse for me. I wasn't officially diagnosed yet, so my complaints were written off as me being whiny, and I was told to shut up and deal with it. So I did. I think I had more meltdowns in that 4-week span than I've had in the past 2 years combined, but whatever. On top of this sensory overload, there was Jack. He made frequent attempts to grab me, trying to hold me against my will, which was disgusting, and I spent most of the class trying to evade him. While all of this was happening, my new gym teacher, they switched every semester, was busy trying to keep a couple of the other guys from drowning each other. She was one adult forced to watch over 40 rowdy kids in a swimming pool. She was a bit preoccupied. The final straw came one Wednesday afternoon, the event that finally pushed me off the edge of the rationality I'd been clinging to and sent me plummeting into full-on bloodthirst. There I was, paddling around, minding my own business, when Jack and his 2 goons managed to corner me. I'm immediately suspicious, hackles raised, as they ask me fairly banal questions about how the pool is today and such annoying stuff. I give short, terse answers, trying to see if I could maybe slip past them. I spotted an opening and bolt for it, but Jack's apparently expecting this. As I swim through the narrow gap between him and one of his friends, he stretches his arm out and actually manages to touch me. I froze for a moment, the delighted giggling of him and his friends echoing in my ears as if from 1,000 miles away. The next thing I knew, I was out of the pool, being held back by the gym teacher, and Jack had a bloody nose. He was shouting angrily at me, calling me a crazy witch, as his nose gushed blood into the water. There was mass confusion among the class. I was told to change quickly and sit in the hallway. Apparently, the gym teacher had heard me screech like a banshee, followed by a number of shouts, and had looked over to see me wrestle out of Jack's grip, jump on his back, and throw him off balance enough to smash his face into the edge of the pool wall. I remembered none of this, but I did find a few chunks of greasy brown hair clenched in my fist that I'd evidently ripped from his scalp when the teacher pulled me off. I washed my hands thoroughly. It was decided that I'd go to school early tomorrow to have a little talk with the dean. They would have just sent me there straight away, but gym was my last class of the day, and the dean had already left by then for whatever reason, so it had to be postponed a little while. It was pretty heavily implied that I was going to be suspended, quite possibly even expelled for what had happened. I was furious. Not only had Jack made my life a living hell, but his horse crap was now going to be the cause of my expulsion. I wasn't about to go down without a fight, but I realized that I'd have to play this pretty smart if I wanted to weasel out of it. The next morning, I did 2 things. I put on mascara, and I made a superficial but rather painful incision on my right thigh, high enough so as to be covered by my shorts. Normally, I hate wearing makeup because I don't like the way it feels, but I'd worn mascara before and noticed the interesting effect it had on my appearance. Specifically, I already have long and dark eyelashes, so adding mascara draws a lot of attention to my eyes and makes them look huge. Like total Bombi eyes. Wide, innocent, naive, harmless. I sat down in front of the dean at 6:40 a.m. I didn't need to fake the fear in my expression, but I made sure to throw in something that could be interpreted as guilt too, bowing my head and twisting my face in dismay. Needless to say, the dean was pretty angry. "Do you know why you're here, young lady?" He said. "Yes," I said softly. "And you know that what you did is very serious?" Yes, I said again, making my voice tremble. "Care to explain yourself, then?" I began, my voice shaking. "I just wanted him to stop." "Stop what?" the dean prompted, his eyebrows furrowed. "I just wanted him to stop touching me," I blurted. As I said this, I reached my hand under the table where he couldn't see it and dug my finger into the cut on my leg, causing me to lurch forward as if in a sob, my other hand covering my face as my eyes watered from the pain. "What does that mean?" the dean asked, his brows now a collision course for Mars. I spent the next several minutes divulging all the nonsense that had happened to me that year, digging into my injury for some tears whenever necessary, and by the end of it, the dean looked horrified. He reaffirmed that no, I shouldn't have attacked Jack like that, but that they'd have to investigate the matter further. I basically got off with a slap on the wrist, and after multiple testimonies from other girls, Jack got suspended for 2 weeks. I wasn't satisfied. They hadn't been able to expel him due to lack of hard evidence, but I was out for blood. He returned to school 2 weeks later, and I was ready. One of his friends had a little brother in my bio class, a fairly chill dude named Owen, who I had worked out a deal with. See, Jack had been very vocal about his displeasure with me to his friends, which made its way to Owen, who, for the low price of bailing his dumb self out in biology, was more than willing to share that information with me. I had a direct pipeline. Anything Jack shared with his friends made its way directly to me via Owen. And, as it turns out, this dude didn't keep a whole lot to himself. There was a lot of nonsense I was tempted to nail him for. For instance, I found out he was selling drugs, mostly Adderall and some occasional weed, from his locker, and had been cheating his way through most of his classes. However, I knew how suspicious it would look for me to report something like that so soon. It'd probably just look like I had a grudge, which I did, and was trying to get even, which I was. He slipped up really, really bad about a week after his return, and that was when I struck. See, he hadn't been subtle about his displeasure with my retaliation, and spent most of gym class sending really ugly looks my way. The gym teacher kept us as far away from each other as possible, but he managed to track me down in a passing period one day and rant at me about how I had screwed him over and that I was a lying little witch. Yada 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 yada, and that he'd make me regret it. Funny, he stole the words right out of my mouth. I found out from Owen later that Jack had been bragging to his friends last night about the switchblade he'd stolen from one of those hunting stores downtown and promised he'd show it off to them later that day. I seized the opportunity. I took a few seconds in the bathroom mirror, scratching at the scab on my leg until my eyes were teary enough to really sell the terrified victim look, then bolted down to the dean's office, stuttering and shaking, crying out for help. The front desk lady was understandably startled by the sight of a seemingly panicked freshman girl bolting into the office, and called the dean out right away. His face grew serious when he saw me. "Mr. Dean, please help. He's gonna kill me," I cried. "Now, slow down," he said. "What happened?" Jack, I said, resisting the urge to grin maniacally at the hardness that appeared in the dean's eyes. He cornered me in the hall. He called me a witch and said he was gonna make me regret telling on him. "He's got a knife." He what? The dean barked. Everything moved very quickly after that. The security guards were told to search the kid's locker, while a couple other security officers were called down to get Jack out of his classroom and take him to the office. I was told by the front desk lady, who had heard the whole exchange, to hide with her in the copier room so Jack wouldn't see me. They found the stolen knife in his backpack and the drugs in his locker. That, combined with his previous charges, was enough to get him not only expelled, but arrested. I never saw him again, which is probably a good thing, because I'm still mad and would probably try to kill him if given the opportunity. My father married Stepmonster. My stepmom came from a different country where it is common for ladies there to marry foreigners, use them to move to our country, then pop out a child or two to lock him down. Stepmom and dad frequently borrowed money from Nana. Never paying it back at their house was full of useless stuff. But here's where the real story starts. My grandfather had Alzheimer's, so it was decided that a granny's flat would be built so my grandparents would live while dad and new family would move into the main house. My grandparents would put a mortgage on their home to build the granny flat, but Daddy and stepmom were fully responsible for the payments. My grandfather passed away before completion or any of the legal paperwork dividing up the ownership had been signed. My dad's stepmom go to my grieving Nana, have her sign a 55-45 split. Dad and stepmom still frequently borrow money from Nana, obviously not making the mortgage payments. Stepmom almost left Dad for a Nigerian scammer before Christmas. Dad got diagnosed with cancer 3 months later. Stepmom started to show her true colors. She loved to play victim to all the friends they had, claiming she had to do everything since my half-sisters didn't help around the house, that my older sister I never saw our father. Easy to sell since both of us had full-time jobs lived over an hour away. She also had 2 of these friends try to confront our half-sisters, but instead ended up facing the wrath of our entire family, 2 of Dad's oldest friends. Stepmom started to lock their bedroom door, denying all access to him, especially Nana. He was her only child. She had recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's herself. Also, family was the most important thing to Dad, so being cut off really hurt him, but was sold as none of them want to see you. My older sister talked to Nana about changing her will and having the 2 of us named power of attorney guardians. Stepmom kicked up a fuss about this because the current will leave pretty much everything to Dad. So if my dad died, the will wasn't changed, she would get it all. The will was changed so that everything would be split equally between the 5 grandchildren. I arranged for an assessment to see what community services Nana would be eligible for or need. Stepmom found out and decided to sit and try to tell the worker Nana didn't need any services as stepmom would for the first time in 5 years. Take care of her, also known as controlling Nana. I shut her down using her martyrdom against her. Dad got worse, so my whole family rushed to see Dad. Stepmom lets us in to see him. We're all talking, comforting each other. But what is stepmom doing? Texting some random dude at my dad's bedside as he is literally dying. Dad passes a day and a half later. I had to call the ambulance while one of my half-sisters had to do PR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, on him. Stepmom is nowhere to be found at the time. I had to tell my family while stepmom called all her friends had them flood the house while her children grieved with us. She didn't console or comfort them in any way ever. At the wake where Dad's real friends' family are, we informed some of her friends about her actions. They were disgusted, told the rest. Within a month, stepmom has shacked up with a new boyfriend is trying to have a kid to lock him in, but she has gone through menopause. Stepmom started to visit Nana when our side of the family wasn't there, so zero, that she could trash talk us freely. Once it became clear Nana can't change her will to include stepmom, she stopped visiting even though she lives 6 feet away. Nana's health declines at a second assessment, decides she'd probably be better off in assisted living. This means selling the houses that stepmom has a share in hasn't made a single payment on since Dad's death. A house that's been trashed, Granny's flat, that doesn't match the council-approved plan. Sister, I make sure that legally the mortgage, cleaning costs, Skip hires a building costs to get the Granny flat up to code come out of stepmom's share. So the house sold for $600,000. Stepmom got $60,000 bonus. Everything was all settled. Stepmom has blown through it all in 6 months, was kicked out by her boyfriend. This story happened back in December, just after the colleges let out for the winter. I'm a teacher and my girlfriend is a grad student, so when she was done for the semester, I took a few days off from work and joined her for a vacation down to Virginia, where her parents live. It was the first time I was going to meet the whole family, and this is looking like a pretty serious relationship that might go all the way. We flew there from Newark on the United Express service, which is essentially a tiny tin can of an airplane where tall people can barely stand up. The seats are arranged 2 on one side and 1 on the other. Going there, we booked a 2-seater together, and a flight went off without a hitch. The trip was great. Her family and I got along. We visited Busch Gardens and Virginia Beach, and I ate an unhealthy amount of Mongolian barbecue. But unfortunately, I had to fly back alone. She planned to stay a few weeks with her parents before school started again, and I had to get back to work on Monday. I don't like flying, and I especially don't like flying solo. I'm not a great sleeper at the best of times, so sleeping on a plane is out. I booked myself a single seat on the left for privacy, brought a decent amount of reading material, and assumed I would just be able to keep myself distracted for the 90-minute flight. Or so I thought. Cast me. Tired of these Karens on this plane, entitled Mother. Horrid beast who doesn't understand how planes work. Tired kid, around 8, was really fine. Slept through most of this. Flight attendant who does not get paid enough for this. Old man who slept through most of this. Provides a key cameo. So I settled into my solo seat near the front of the standard seating, and the old man behind me popped a few pills and immediately fell asleep. I'm distracting myself with magazines when I hear a bellow of "It'll fit just fine." The entitled Mother storms into the plane, pulling the kid with one hand and an oversized wheeled suitcase with another. She proceeds to huff and puff while shoving it into the overhead compartment, despite all of us being told that baggage space is limited and we should check all hard suitcases. She eventually crams it in, sits down with kid, and the flight takes off. As soon as we get going, I turn on my overhead light and get back to reading. About 5 minutes later, I snap out of my distraction, entitled Mutter, Sir? Sir. Me, yes. You need to turn your overhead light off. My daughter and I are trying to sleep. Sorry, but I want to be able to read during this flight. It's only 6:30. Excuse me? I'll have you know my daughter and I have been traveling all weekend. We're both exhausted, and the least you can do is be a little accommodating. You're the only person on this flight with their light on. Well, sorry about that, but I can't really sleep on flights. I need this light.
Okay, that's enough of that.
She gets up out of her seat and quickly turns my light off, then sits back down with a smug smirk. I quickly turn the light back on. Do not touch my light again. Oh, really? We'll see what the authorities have to say about this. With another of her trademark smirks, she hits the flight attendant call button about 5 times in a row. I immediately get anxious. I'm not a white dude, Moroccan Jewish to be exact, and any interaction with authority figures makes me nervous. But this is so absurd, I decide to see where it goes. I get back to reading as we wait for the flight attendant to get there. She shows up, a young woman who looks like she's had a long day. It's about to get longer. Flight attendant, can I help you, ma'am? Entitled, Mother, yes, you can. This horribly rude man won't turn off his overhead light, even after I told him how tired my daughter and I are. We have to fly to Cleveland tonight after this flight, and I think we deserve a little peace. Well, ma'am, everyone can use their light as they want, but let me see what I can do. She turns to me. Sir, would you mind turning out the light so she can sleep? Sorry, like I told her, I bought a solo seat so I could read. Just tell him to turn it off. He has to do what you say. Ma'am, we have blindfolds that you can use for you and your daughter to block out the light if you want. Those are probably filthy. No, they're individually wrapped and... Why are you making this so hard? Just make him turn it off. The flight attendant says to me,
Sir, would you be willing to move seats so she's not bothered?
We have some empty seats there. She points to a seat near the back next to another man. I'm catching a train after I get off, and I don't like the idea of being at the back. Sorry. Especially as pointed look upwards. Some people are likely going to be taking a while to get their luggage out. How dare you? You look like you belong in the back of the plane. Just get back there and stop bothering us. Now, I was kind of casually dressed and had a 4-day beard, but we all know what she really meant. My stubbornness and spite levels just went up over 9,000. Me. Pass. Also, nice racism. You know what I meant, you punk? She says to the flight attendant, are you going to do something about this or not? Her kid wakes up. Mommy? Entitled Mother. Look what you did. I'll have you know that my kid has a spelling bee on Monday, and you're depriving her of much-needed sleep. Then to the flight attendant. Now you go talk with someone with the authority to do something about this and get this punk out of my sight, or I'll have your job. Sir, it's not a long flight. Would you please? Me. I'm sorry, but I don't have a problem here. She does, and she's making this entire flight miserable. I don't think I should have to inconvenience myself to make her happy. Looking defeated, the flight attendant runs up to the front of the plane to talk to what I assume are the people in charge. The entitled mother snarls at me. You're in for it now. You'll be on the no-fly list after this. Lady, you're nuts. Get help. Get help. The flight attendant returns and immediately turns to me. The mother's eyes go wide with excitement. Sir, would you be willing to move up 4 rows? You'll be closer to the front that way, and it's another single seat. She doesn't say it, but I know this is the extra legroom section that you pay a little more for. Yes, I think that's fine. Wait, he gets a better seat? Why didn't you offer that to us? There's only single seats available up there, ma'am. This is ridiculous. He shouldn't get rewarded. He ruined our flight, and when we get to Newark, I will be informing your boss and the authorities so you both get exactly what you... The old man startles the entire flight. For God's sake, lady, shut up. I'm trying to sleep. She shuts up after that, and I move to my new seat. I wish I could tell you this was some luxurious first-class digs, but this is a short-haul flight in a tin can. I had maybe 2 more inches of legroom, and I got my half cup of soda and my tiny bag of pretzels a few minutes early, but I was far away from the entitled mother. When the flight landed, I quickly grabbed my bag and got off, sneaking a look back as she held up the entire line trying to wedge her suitcase free from the tiny overhead compartment. We were about 20 minutes early to Newark, so I got a bagel before catching my train. I get to see the entitled mother barreling past, dragging the suitcase and her kid behind her, yelling that this airport is full of idiots and she doesn't know where to find her connecting flight. She catches sight of me at the bagel place. Entitled mother. You're a horrible person, and I hope you go straight to hell. Me, good luck getting back to Cleveland. Don't come back. And that was the end of the story of Karen the First, scourge of airplanes. It ended without any police, property damage, or assault, but it certainly did nothing to make me appreciate flying more. Well, let me give you a bit of backstory. This was back in 2014. I was just settling into a comfortable yet unfulfilling task of being a secretary for a high, but not that high, ranking officer. Let's call him Mick in Air Force Intelligence. I loved Mick and the other officers in his unit, but did not like the job because I was supposed to be drafted into a frontline intelligence unit, but broke my arm bad during the first day of boot camp. Anyway, I was just doing my thing, in the process of fighting to be allowed into officer school with 2 metal plates in my arm and a titanium bolt in my knee, and all that time working hard to keep my commander's schedule the way he liked it. Now my commander had one strict policy. No matter who it was, no matter how high-ranking or low, if he was requested to join a meeting, an explanation, like meeting agendas, priorities, etc., had to be delivered to me as his secretary, at least a week prior to the meeting, to help him review it. If it was top secret or top priority, the week prior rule was not applied, but still, we requested the explanation as soon as possible before we could say yes or no. Well, as you would imagine, he being a high-ranking officer meant that other, maybe even higher-ranking officers might request a meeting with him. Most of the time it went smoothly, except for one. One morning I was receiving a call on the main line from a certain secretary of a certain high-ranking officer. Let's call her Betty and him Benny. Hey, I need Mick to head over to a conference meeting tomorrow at our office. Their office is in a different city, like a 30 minutes drive. Hey Betty, what's this all about? I haven't seen an email invite with the details, I told her. Oh, we can't send it. It's top secret. This wasn't surprising when things were top secret. Usually it was explained over the red line and in some cases sent by fax connected to the red line. Okay, wait a second, then I switch to the red line and call her office. She picks up. I can literally feel her scoffing through the phone and say, this really isn't necessary. Just tell Mick to head over tomorrow by 10:30 a.m. Sorry, Betty, I can't do that without being given an explanation, written or verbal. What? Do you even realize who you're talking to? She then goes into me, yelling that she could have me on trial for not following orders from a superior officer. I was a mere corporal, which was unusual for a colonel. She was a major and a secretary of a brigadier general. I then go into anger management mode, and keeping my tone the most calm and reasonable, I say, if your commander isn't pleased with my reasoning, he's more than welcome to settle this with Mick. The thing is, Mick isn't available until 2 days from now because he's in active training. Almost all Air Force commanders and high-ranking officers are also pilots and need to go to their respective bases to train once a week. What? Your commander will hear of this. Click. Well, figuring this isn't over, I send a page to Mick saying he might receive angry calls soon. He's a really chill guy and knows to trust my judgment by now. Also, a side note, Mick's office is so unique, he doesn't have a direct commanding officer that's brigadier general. His direct commander is the commander of the entire Air Force. 15 minutes later, I got a conference red line call from the Air Force Command Office. It was me, Betty, and the secretary of the commander, let's call her Angela, out, ranking both me and Betty by a lot and 100% not interested. Hey, I'm here with Betty. I understand they requested Mick to come to a conference tomorrow? Angela asks. Yes, she did call me. And as I explained that without a reasonable excuse, I cannot change his schedule like that. I answered her. And like I've said, I can't divulge that info to a corporal. It's top secret, Betty explains. Angela, now getting more annoyed by this. You do know there's no officer acting as Mick's secretary, right? It's not my problem. I have orders not to divulge top secret info, Betty tells her, which is total nonsense. I have clearance levels higher than most, as Mick's role as head intelligence advisor to the Air Force commander himself, sometimes representing him in meetings with top-ranking officials across the globe. Well then, even if you're right, why didn't you fax it via the red line? Send it now or Mick won't arrive, Angela says. Oh my God, what is it with you people? Don't you get that my commander's meeting is important? Send Mick, and that's it. She then goes into yelling at the secretary of the Air Force commander, blaming her for incompetence. Suddenly, we hear rushing steps and a different voice comes up from Angela's phone. Who is it? It's Betty, from Benny's office. I understand you're the secretary of the Air Force commander? She then opens up on a tirade of lies about me and Angela. The voice cuts her off. I'm sorry, Betty, but this is the Air Force commander. Remind me who's this Benny you're so arrogant about that you decide to yell at 2 of my most trusted secretaries? Betty, grasping at straws right now, mumbling,
Oh, sorry, sir. It's just that they weren't very nice.
The Air Force freaking commander, while I can hear Angela laughing hard in the background. Betty, listen closely. I do not like your attitude and do not approve of your demands. You can tell Benny that until he personally apologizes to both my secretary and Mix, he can expect no attendance from the Air Force in any meeting. Good day. Good day. Click. Click. 1 hour later, I receive a knock on my office door. Here enters Benny. A brigadier general asks for me, apologizes for his secretary's behavior, and asks if there's a way to get Mick in his meeting. I stammer out that I'll check with Angela. We eventually sent a low-ranking officer that told us the things spoken in the meeting were not top secret and had nothing to do with the Air Force. He just came, ate some pastries, drank some coffee, and left. Betty never called us again, only Benny, and he always asked for me. So I'm chilling at work, watching my boss's crotch goblins when there is a knock at the door. I got up to answer the door and wasn't happy to see Catherine, the mother of the children. The twins saw their mom and ran up to her. Catherine was acting like their mother, smiling and saying how Mama missed them like which. The last time you saw these kids was a year ago. When Catherine saw Peter, the youngest one, she was like, "You got so big, Mama's little boy." Peter was like, "Screw this," and got behind me and just stared at his mom. Catherine had the most disgusted look on her face. I hate to say this, but Peter doesn't recognize Catherine. He knows her as Mommy, but they don't have a relationship anymore. Catherine, still salty, told the twins to go get Daddy. The twins ran off to go get their father, and as soon as Mr. Smith saw Catherine, he said, "Oh, hell no." I thought they were joking. With that, I thought, well, it's going to get loud, and took the kids upstairs. I went to Ethan's room, the second son, and told him to grab his switch and go into his safety room. It's a tiny room inside his closet. He's autistic. It's basically a room for him to calm down in. I gave Peter his tablet and disinfected the twins, making sure they didn't get anywhere near Peter. Then I got called back downstairs. I went downstairs and got told by Mr. Smith's to take a seat because I can't do this alone. So Mr. Smith asked Catherine what she wanted, and Catherine tried to play it off like she's just in the neighborhood, but Mr. Smith told her to stop with the lies and the real reason why she's here. Like clockwork, Catherine dropped her friendly demeanor and said, "Look, I'm in debt. I need some money." Mr. Smith asked how much Catherine was asking for, and her answer was $1 million. Mr. Smith then asked what happened to the $1 million I gave you last year. She said she spent it and that she deserves to live in luxury. Mr. Smith told her, why don't she sell one of the vacation homes he gave her? She said she sold them. I were dumbfounded, but Mr. Smith wasn't fazed by it. He said, "Catherine, I gave you $5 million during the divorce, then turned around and gave you another $1 million. You're either lying or you are truly stupid." Catherine said that she doesn't care what he thinks of her. She just wants the money so she can go. Mr. Smith told her no. Catherine was flabbergasted. She was appalled that Mr. Smith told her no. Catherine said, "Well, I need that money." And Mr. Smith said, "Well, I don't care anymore." It was so weird because Mr. Smith is happy. He's got the same chaotic good energy as Will in The Fresh Prince. But the way he said it was so cold, it was kind of sexy, to be honest. I simp for my boss, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Catherine's attitude then changed. She said, "You know, I can be very, very believable." Mr. Smith said, "I know you convinced me to marry you." Catherine continued to say, "I have connections in this town. If I make a few calls, the sheriff and key apps." Mr. Smith cut her off. "I'm going to have to stop you right there. Catherine, I simply don't care. I don't care about you or about your financial state." Catherine asked him if he thought she was bluffing. Mr. Smith said no. "I know you're a manipulative, heartless harpy, but I don't give a damn." Catherine looked like she just ate a lemon. She then asked, "Is your money more important than your children?" Mr. Smith told her that his children come first. That's why he's putting his foot down. He said, "Look, I'm done with you using my children as pawns, just to squeeze a few bucks out of my wallet. I don't care that you're in debt. You can live under the underpass and beg for change for all I care. And now I need you to leave." Catherine screeching like a kookaburra, "You have two options. Give me the kids or the money." Mr. Smith told her to get lost. Catherine got up and tried to run upstairs for the kids, but I beat her to the stairs and blocked it. She told me to move, and I told her no. Catherine then said, "Move, you stupid child. I'm a mother. I have the right to take my kids. You always tried to act like you're their mother." I time in with "This is sad, but it's true. I've been more of a mother to these kids in the past 2 years than you have ever been." Now I'm guessing the apple doesn't fall quite far from the tree because Catherine grabbed me by the hair. I think my hair just attracts entitled people because both her and her daughter went for it and tried to drag me away from the stairs. With the grace of a ballerina and the strength of a truck, Mr. Smith grabs Catherine by the throat, slammed her against the wall, and yells in her face, "Don't touch her." He then let go of her and Catherine fell to the floor, saying she's going to call the cops. Mr. Smith told her to call them. "They're going to find a body if you don't leave my house." Catherine just stared at him. I think she was actually afraid of him. He was her emotional and physical punching bag for years. Ironic, isn't it? Mr. Smith then asked her, "Do your legs work or do you need me to drag you?" With that, Catherine got up and hightailed it out of the house. As soon as Catherine left, Mr. Smith went into the kitchen and I followed him. I watched him pour himself a drink. Then he just stared at that hand he choked Catherine with. He was shaking with rage. I asked him if he was okay, and he just stared at his hand. I went over to him and started patting his back. It took him a minute, but he finally said I didn't mean to lay my hands on her. Mr. Smith never did anything like that before. Until now, he never hit her, even when she deserved it. He asked me if I'm okay. I said I'm fine, but I told him I was really worried about him. Then all of his pain, anger, and sadness just came out at once. He started sobbing. All that he said was, "I'm just so tired." Then the front window started shattering. If your first thought was Catherine came back with a baseball bat, you're right. I'm extremely nervous at this point, and Mr. Smith handed me the phone and gave me instructions to call the cops and took the kids and locked us in the bathroom. I did what I was told, trying to stay calm while talking to the police on the phone. I kept trying to calm down the 4 children. Eventually, he joined us while on the phone talking to someone. Then we all huddled in the bathroom until a dude's voice told us to come down and that it was safe. We went downstairs, and to see this old dude with a shotgun, I immediately recognized the dude as the cop. Let's call him Kay. That lives across the street.
I was so happy to see him.
I was even more happy to go outside and see Catherine on the ground with Kay's son's knee on her back. Me and the kids went to Kay's house until backup arrived. When the cops got there, they immediately put Catherine in the wee-woo wagon. She didn't go down without a fight, though. It was funny, to be honest. The cops took statements, checked us for injuries. Then Mike got called, oldest son, to come and pick up the kids and drop me off home. Catherine destroyed the minivan and Mr. Smith's personal car in the process of her rampage. And when Mike arrived, saw his mother in the cop car. He laughed and started taunting her like she was a caged animal. He got told off for taunting her, and then we all piled into his car. Mr. Smith told me to text him when I get home and to take a break, and that he will pay me tomorrow for the full following week. I'm home now, and I just texted him and I asked for permission to tell the story. He gave me the go ahead, and so 2020, one sucks too.